This is Kyle McCord, and you're listening to Austin, Felix, and Matt on the W Debate.
Welcome to the W Debate. All right, boys. Are we ready to debate? Austin, you tweeted something, girl. You tweeted your running back ranking. Explain yourself.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast. You jumped up and...
That's Austin Nate.
Who is going to be that guy? And for me, Bijan Robinson is still going to be that guy.
Back to the ground with Robinson, who spins and then tries to bounce it. A stiff arm, another one as he rides it, keeps his balance. They're going to say he stepped out, but
I'm Felix Sharpe. I know you didn't think that we would get through this episode without mentioning the name one Zach F. Wilson.
Screener draw. Oh, Wilson is going to uncourt for the end zone, and he drops it in beautifully. And it is his roommate Dax Milne on the touchdown.
That's Matt Bruni.
G. Scott Jr. Obviously, I waxed poetic about him on the last episode, so I won't do that again here.
And this time it's Fields on the carry. Watch out! Justin Fields hails Columbus 51 yards.
Bruni, are you ready to go head to head with me?
I am.
Gotta get my popcorn out here. Hold on.
Gotta continue. I got it. Kyle McCord is going to end up winning the job. He's going to be rated higher.
Well, I'm not nearly as passionate about what I'm about to talk about.
Our apologies to Herb Street. We ran out of time. We'll get him rescheduled soon. And for Matt Bruning and Austin Nate, I'm Felix Sharpe. Good night and good luck. All right, we've got a W Debate extra today. I've got two really, the brain power in this StreamYard room is ridiculous right now. Chris Moxley 19 on Twitter, Jerrick Backus, the man behind the analytics tool at campus2canton.com. Chris Moxley recently joining campus2canton.com as a contributor. And guys, we got to talk about Jaylen Waddle. If you are a film grinder, a jock, looking at the film, you got to love Jaylen Waddle, but admittedly, his numbers, his analytical profile pales in comparison to players who have had fantasy success in the NFL. Despite his speed, despite his above-the-rim mentality, despite the ability to be used in a variety of different ways, and despite all of that, his numbers, his analytical profile leaves something to be desired. Jerrick, let me kick this to you first. Why is the analytics community lower on Waddle? If you could explain that to someone like me who doesn't have a background or who may not have been exposed to analytics.
Yeah. So a lot of it comes down to breakout potential and breakout year. Waddle did not break out. And when I say breakout, it's I'm using a weighted dominator rating, which sounds scary. But it's just the reception yard market share and the reception TD market share, where the yardage is weighted at 80% and the TDs are weighted at 20%. So it puts more emphasis on the yardage, which is more predictable at the next level.
So let me stop you right there. So he has to cross a certain threshold to have a quote unquote breakout age. Younger breakout age is better, correct?
Correct.
And he has to achieve a certain percentage of a team's total receiving yardage and a total percentage of a team's total touchdowns or what have you, and they're weighted together. All right.
Yep. And what we're looking for ideally is a 30% weighted dominator breakout. That is what the best of the best usually hit in their freshman or sophomore year, year 1 or 2. So that's what we're looking for. And Waddle, the best he got was in his freshman year at about almost 17%. of his team's total weighted dominator. So leaves something to be desired from his breakout year.
Well, Jerrick, what's the correlation between breakout age or breakout year and potential fantasy success?
Are you looking for a real number? Because, I mean, okay, we'll say we want to see 30%, but ideally 30%, but we also want to see at least 20%. Like 20% is the minimum you want to see from a player's freshman or sophomore year. And he just didn't hit that. So from the bucket, well, I'll say it like this. The bucket of players that hit a 30% dominator in their freshman or sophomore year is a lot smaller than the bucket of players who don't. And the players who do hit that in their first year 1 or 2 hit at a much higher rate than the other bucket. So it may, in the end, the total numbers of players who hit may be somewhat similar, but your hit rate for the players who do hit in year 1 or 2 is a lot higher.
So we're looking for 30% as far as weighted dominator, which is a combination of total receiving yards and total touchdowns. Is that right?
Touchdown market share.
Touchdown market share. Okay. And our man Waddle has never hit that 30%. Has he ever hit 20? 17 has been his highest.
17 has been his highest. That was his freshman year.
So suffice it to say, if Jaylen Waddle becomes, a top 20 wide receiver, he will be an outlier analytically. Is that right?
If you're using season-long stats, I'll make that caveat because season-long stats are a little more stable, a little more predictable than point per game stats. Where you take if they miss games, you only count the games they played in. Season-long stats are better translate to the NFL. At least that's some of the latest research.
So, Jerrick, if somebody goes to to Canton.com, and you should go to campuscanton.com, there is a tab called Player Metrics. Could you explain briefly what is on that tab and what is that magical line that we see on all of your charts, sir?
Yes. So that magical line on the chart is the trend line for the top 24 wide receivers who hit top 24 in the NFL. So this is taking their college stats and following them through the NFL. And if they did well, their stats count in this trend line. So this is the average of all the players that hit top 24. And this isn't like you have to hit it multiple times. You just have to hit it once. And so that's why you like to see over that line, because generally some of the more outlier profiles will be dragging that line down a little bit. So the best players will be above that line.
Now, I know that if we go to campuscanton.com, there are a lot of different metrics that we could choose to compare Jaylen Waddle against whomever. Are there any places where Jaylen Waddle, his profile reaches above that line and therefore there's hope for his analytical profile?
There is some hope. It is in the reception yards per team pass attempt department. This stat is literally what it sounds like. It's the total reception yards divided by the team's pass attempts. And it's kind of a volume stat or metric and efficiency metric kind of wrapped up into one. And this is where Waddle actually broke out, if you will. He was above the top 24 trend line in his freshman year. So there is a redeeming stat, and seeing him cross that in his freshman year is actually a lot of players don't hit it in their freshman year. So it's good to see that as his redeeming stat.
Okay. So Chris, I want to come to you. I want to bring you in here because it hasn't been released yet, but you've written a pretty detailed profile on why there's hope for Jaylen Waddle's profile from an analytics perspective. And Jerrick just hit a little bit on that. Chris, talk to us. The film grinders are freaking out here because all we see, I mean, we're very like the film grinders are very much cavemen like people. All we see is Jerrick's magic production line and Jaylen Waddle falling way below that line and never reaching that line. Chris, tell me why there's hope for him.
Yeah, well, I think Jerrick kind of touched on it, right? So his yards per team pass attempt are like that. His freshman season is very impressive. When you put it in the context of this 2021 receiving class, he's third in his freshman year production. He's only behind Rondale Moore and Rashad Bateman. And Rondale Moore was obviously special in his freshman season, but he was slightly behind Bateman. And the rest of the list includes guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Seth Williams, Elijah Moore, Jamar Chase. It's a good list to be on. Those are productive players we expect to succeed in the NFL, have great analytical profiles. Waddle kind of stands out in that aspect. I really value this metric a lot because Jerrick spoke to it a little bit, right? It talks about volume. It talks about, your efficiency compared to, what your team looks like. And I think what I really like about Waddle's production in this metric specifically is that it was so much more impressive than every other Alabama wide receiver. So his freshman year, he posted 1.96 yards per team pass attempt. The highest besides Waddle of the big four, I'll call them, was Jerry Jeudy in his freshman year at 0.79. Waddle, it was in a different class during his freshman year. He was second on the team in receiving yards. I understand he didn't hit that, what we're looking for from a 20% perspective, but his yards per team pass attempt really, I consider that a breakout in terms of, yes, he didn't break out in the traditional weighted dominator sense, but he hit a metric that is very important when we're trying to predict, or at least attempt to predict, wide receiver success.
So I want to try to summarize what this means, again, in caveman's terms. So yards per team pass attempt, it's how efficient or everybody's not getting the same opportunity, but how efficient is that player when they are getting the opportunity? Is that what the metric is measuring?
Yeah, it speaks to that and a little bit of volume. I think in the context of this metric specifically, you want to see players hit, I think it's 1.6 in their freshman year. We're really looking for them to kind of cross that number because it speaks to how efficient a player can be. Is 100 yards on 10 targets the same as 100 yards on 5 targets? So that's really what we're trying to capture with this metric.
So no breakout age, but has good benchmarks on yards per team pass attempt. Will give us some hope. All right. Okay. Well, then the question is film grinders are going to have Jaylen Waddle, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there. Jerrick, are you okay? This is the question I've been wanting to ask you. I really respect both of you guys' opinions, and I want to know, are you okay with that? Jerrick, Jaylen Waddle is going to go with the top 7, 8-ish pick in most rookie drafts. Is that okay by you?
Top, it's a little rich for my blood. Right now I have Waddle just outside my top 5. And that is because I think I can predict.
They're not going to like you. They're not going to like you.
Oh, I know. I've heard already on Twitter a decent amount. But I will say he is above Devonta Smith in my rankings, one spot above, because he had the reception yards per team pass attempt above the trend line in his freshman year. And that's something that Smith didn't hit until his third year on the team. And I think that difference is important. The other players I have in front of Waddle, Elijah Moore, Diami Brown, Rondale Moore, and the Chase and Bateman, they have profiles that I feel like I can project forward with more confidence than I have to have with Waddle. I have to interpret his a little bit more, and that's why he's just a tier down from those other players for me.
Jerrick, how does draft capital impact your decision if we get to the NFL draft and Jaylen Waddle is taken in the top 15? Would you be more comfortable with ranking him, where the consensus is in top 3, top 2, somewhere around there? Would top 15 draft capital make you feel more comfortable?
I don't know if his tier would change for me. It might, depending on how the other players ahead of him are drafted. Like if Rondale Moore drops to the 3rd round, I would probably be dropping him down into the same tier and maybe potentially behind Waddle. That would be a tough discussion. But if the other players, Elijah Moore gets 1st round draft capital, Diami Brown gets 2nd round draft capital, I'm more than comfortable keeping my rankings where they are, because as long as you get 1st or 2nd round draft capital, the numbers don't really sway either way, as long as it's not a top 5 pick in the draft.
Chris, Jerrick's got he's going to make a whole lot of people mad. But his logic is sound. Chris, Jaylen Waddle goes top 7, top 8. Is that okay with you?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, Jerrick is going to get the people riled up, but I'm a man of the people. I'm here for Jaylen Waddle. I'm here for everybody that loves Jaylen Waddle. I'm here to tell you that it's okay. I'm here to tell you that you can love his analytical profile. You can love his film, and it all lines up perfectly. I think it's hard to look at Waddle and say, you know what? His production wasn't there, and that sucks. There is, as much as I harp on people who talk about Alabama's receiving room and how it's so great, it is unprecedented. There is so much talent there that it's still hard to break out. So looking at those efficiency metrics, saying, hey, yards per team pass attempt, he's hitting it his freshman year, a very special freshman year where he outproduced the Heisman winner. His 2nd year, he's an all-time return man. So that's going to get him on the field early, get him involved early. That's something we look for in analytical profiles as well. Can you be involved in ancillary metrics, right? So return game is important. If he goes top 6 or 7 in the NFL draft, I'm happy with it. I think he can be deployed all over the field, while a guy like Elijah Moore is going to end up in the slot. His speed, his downfield success rate, he led the SEC in success rate this year versus coverage. I mean, he can do everything at all levels of the field. I am totally fine if someone takes him in the top 7 or 8 in the draft, and I'm totally fine taking him high in my rookie draft too.
Jerrick, Chris brings up a good point. I mean, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith. He's played with all of these. I mean, I think O.J. Howard. I mean, he's played with Najee Harris. He didn't get a breakout age, but the Alabama team has been stacked. What's your response to that? The lack of a breakout age, despite him being in a historically good talent around him.
So the talent has been good. I guess there's no denying that. I would say we don't necessarily know if it lives up to the hype yet. That's the thing. Jeudy came into the league. We know from Judy's profile, he probably has, or he's who I see as the best profile out of all the players. And he showed it in his sophomore year when he just, once I believe Calvin Ridley left, and he just took over the wide receiver room and dominated targets, reception share, everything. And so, yeah, crap, where am I going with this? Oh, yeah. So we're pretty sure he's good because when he came into the NFL, he did pretty well. Even people want to rag on him for being inefficient, but he earned targets and he came away with 800 something yards in his freshman year, which is pretty good. Ruggs is a different story. He's trash. I think a lot of people will agree. He never really did much. And at least, I mean, I can say with confidence that Waddle is better than Ruggs. But we're kind of looking at a range of outcomes from Waddle here as, we know he's better than Ruggs. Is he better than Judy? Because he didn't outplay Judy in either his freshman or sophomore year. So do we think Judy might be his ceiling because he couldn't outplay him? That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Chris, let me come back to you here. Chris, are you okay with making an excuse for Waddle based on the talent he had around him? And if you are, then that you're not objective. You're not applying analytics objectively, Chris. What's your response to that?
I think I'm okay making so I'm not trying to dismiss it entirely, because if Waddle was really like an amazing elite prospect, he would have captured the market share, right? Like he would have done it. He just would have. So he's not like he's like an amazing elite, like all-time prospect, like a CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. Like, he's not on that level, and that's not really what I'm trying to argue. But I do think, has there been a wide receiver room with as much talent as Alabama at a single time recently? Maybe LSU with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. But I mean, the depth of Alabama, they had 3 other first-round picks. They had a second-round tight end, a first-round pass-catching running back. That's not normal for a college offense. They have players. They're 5 stars. They go there. They have talent. So yes, we don't know if these players are good in the NFL, and Henry Ruggs sucks. Like I think we're all kind of in agreement there. Like he's trash. But Jerry Jeudy's a good player, regardless of what his ceiling is in the NFL. We know Jerry Jeudy's good. Devonta Smith just won the Heisman. Regardless of what his ceiling is in the NFL, these are not players that you see the average player play with and against in the context of their offense. So yes, we cannot explain Jaylen Waddle's production away, because he would have dominated them if he was like super, super great. But it at least gives an argument that says, hey, his freshman year, he came in, he beat out Ruggs handedly. He beat out Devonta Smith handedly. He beat out Irv Smith. He was the second producer on an offense with a lot of talent for a college team, right? We don't know if they're good in the NFL, but we do know that they're a very talented college offense. So I'm willing to accept that aspect, that maybe they're not all-time great players, even if they're first rounders, but I know that these players are good in the context of college. I know they're very talented. So I'm willing to accept, hey, his freshman season, what he was able to do, outperform all of those other players, that's enough for me to say, hey, I think Waddle has it.
Okay. All right. So,
and I get
Jerrick,
that might just be where we differ in our approaches. To rank him that high, I have to make some assumptions in his senior year. Like, he played 4 games. He's great in those 4 games, but could he keep it up for the full season? Probably, but I have to do some guesswork there. And his freshman year was really good, but he didn't hit the actual breakout numbers that I'm looking for to consider it a breakout. And if you don't hit those breakout numbers, your odds of making it in the NFL drop drastically. So I'd say my ranking is definitely on the confidence of how good he is, because the players ahead of him, I am more confident that they will be good NFL players compared to his profile.
Backus bomb. Backus bomb. Anything else, gentlemen? Any questions that I forgot to ask?
So one thing I'll add, I think we didn't talk about, is I think it's important to. So this data is not publicly available, and so it's really hard to distill it into what it compares like and what it looks like. But it's behind paywalls. A lot of people have access to it, but I would like to point out that Jaylen Waddle had one of the best yards per route run seasons and careers of all time. Just saying. He's really efficient in yards per route run too.
Was that this year?
This year, his freshman year, his total career, I think he's 9th overall in the last 8 years.
His freshman year too?
Oh yeah. He so the data's behind a paywall, to be fair, right? Like, so it's hard to distill exactly like what this looks like in context, but his yards per route run as a true freshman was 3.58, which was 1.57 yards above Alabama's average, which is fantastic in context. Like that's really, really impressive. His yards per route run in total is 3.6 overall. So this year was slightly higher. With over the last 8 years, I think that ranks 9th overall. So like, it's not just per team pass attempt that he's succeeding. He's also succeeding in yards per route run, like at a very, very high level.
Chris, what is yards per route run? What is that metric telling us?
It's kind of exactly like it sounds like, right? So how many yards are they accumulating based on the number of routes that they are running for their team? And so it allows us to kind of distill down almost a per play, like how are they performing when they're on the field? So that second year where Waddle was not on the field very often, it's hard to exactly determine like why that happened, right? Was Saban showcasing his draft eligible wide receivers? Possibly, but I can't make that assumption. I don't know why, but I do know that when Waddle was on the field, when he was on the field and running routes, he was extremely successful. Like 3.58 and then a career average of 3.6 is really, really impressive. Like those are top 10 over the last decade. Like those are very, very high level numbers to be hitting as any player. So that's a high level efficiency metric that, we don't have all the data for because it's, again, behind paywalls and it's not tracked. But, PFF reports a lot of this, and it's something that is very interesting in his profile that I think is kind of under the radar because we don't have all the data for it.
Well, I want to thank you guys for doing this kind of impromptu. I thought it would be good to get you two together. You can follow Chris Moxley at Chris Moxley 19. Check a look out later this week for Chris's article on campus2canton.com. Be sure to follow Debbie Debate. We're going to have Chris and Jerrick. We're going to be a part of the NFL draft, the campus2canton.com's NFL draft coverage, but we got a lot of stuff going on. Campus to Canton, we're calling the Alabama spring game this coming Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. Look out for Jerrick's player metrics tool. It will give you a good baseline of information on how to, or analytically, how you should value these prospects. Again, at campus2canton.com, and follow, of course, Jerrick at Jerrick Backus on Twitter. Guys, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for putting this together, Felix.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good luck.
See ya.